I'm Cullen Gilchrist, CEO and founder of Union Kitchen. And this is Food Founders, stories from launch to scale. Let's get started. In this episode, we speak with Greg D'Orazio and Kate Clark from Giant Food. Giant, a subsidiary of Ahold Delhaize, operates nearly 200 retail stores in the Mid-Atlantic region. With a new initiative focused on local products, Greg and Kate are here to share their best practices for onboarding with new retailers, what makes a product stand out at Giant, and why e-commerce is a great way to expand your customer base. I'm Cullen, CEO and founder of Union Kitchen and the host of our podcast. It's awesome to have you guys here.
Thank you.
Why don't we get started? Just, let's introduce you to everyone listening. Greg, do you want to kick us off?
Sure. Thanks for having us again. And I guess I'll start off with just a quick background bio.
Love it.
I grew up outside of Philadelphia and bounced around after college, lived on the West Coast, lived in the Midwest, and then found my way back closer to home. And now I live in Annapolis with my wife and my daughter who's 8 years old, so we do a lot of chasing her around. But it's great to be in the DC market now.
Fantastic. And Kate, you want to say hi?
Yes, hi. I'm Kate Clark. I'm the e-commerce merchandising manager at Giant Food, so I support our non-perishable team. Grew up in New Jersey, live in Maryland now. Also a mom, have two little girls, 5-year-old and a 7-year-old. We were just talking about softball and running them around.
Yeah.
But yeah, very happy in Maryland now.
Gotcha. And so, you work in food now, and you've been doing that for a little bit, but I'd love to kind of hear a little bit about, how you got into food.
Yeah, so I was thinking about it actually on my way here. I have 18 years of e-commerce experience, which sounds crazy when you say it out loud. But spent 14 years at a company called Custom Ink. So wholesale apparel, you get t-shirts for Union Kitchen. Yeah. I managed our merchandising team there. Decided I needed a change, so moved over to home improvement. So worked for Home Depot for a couple of years, managing online experience of everything from flooring to paint to fencing. So it was a really interesting experience. And then made the shift to food actually right before COVID. So started at Giant Food and it's been a whirlwind ever since.
Yeah,
but definitely.
Food e-commerce.
Food e-commerce, 2 weeks before COVID, but it's been awesome. Really enjoying it.
And did you want to get into food? Is that a passion of yours, or is it something that just kind of fit your experience?
I think it was a little bit of both. I mean, the food industry in e-commerce is exploding. And so just, being part of that movement, that industry was really exciting to me. And when the opportunity presented itself, I jumped on it.
Yeah, fantastic.
Yeah.
Well, Greg, we got to learn about kind of you jumping around, but your title and what are you doing right now for Giant?
So I'm the e-commerce lead for Giant Food, which sounds like a big job, but really it's about keeping everyone in our organization working on e-commerce pointed in the same direction. So there's thousands of people when you think about delivery drivers and people in the stores and people in IT. But I think at the end of the day, my role is to make sure we're all heading in the same direction, that there's a North Star out there, and that our customer experience from end to end is great, is best in class, and so that's what I kind of define my role as the head of e-commerce.
Gotcha. So thinking about the customers.
Absolutely. It has to, we only get a small amount of their time in person at least, so it's critical that their online experience, their app experience, their customer service experience if they call us, in addition to the fulfillment end of it, is great. So trying to juggle all those balls and keep all those functions kind of aligned is tough.
Yeah, I mean, I've worked in food my whole career, and food is ultimately just making people happy, right? And there's all these logistics that go into all these weird little things, all the things that a chef does or a dishwasher does or a driver does that makes it work. But ultimately, it's just like how does the people eating that food feel good?
Absolutely.
So your background, how did you get into food? Is this something you did for a while?
No, it was a little bit of a roundabout way. After college, I was an engineer. So I was in the aerospace industry actually out in Seattle. I built different kinds of electronic systems which go into Airbus and Boeing planes. And I felt really far from the product, even though it was like saving lives and doing great things. And so I went back to grad school with, in my back of my mind, I knew I wanted to get closer to the sort of end customer. And I ended up with an internship at General Mills up in Minneapolis. And what pure, consumer product out there than Cheerios and Play-Doh and that kind of stuff. So that was my entry into food. That was my entry into sort of customer, facing roles and products. And it's been great ever since. I spent 11 years there and then came into Ahold and our Giant brand about 7 years ago.
And pretty different. I know in food, but with General Mills, it's they're they're a CPG, they're a manufacturer, they're a marketing company.
Yep.
And now you're with a retailer, which is kind of on the other end of the equation of getting it to the final consumer day in and day out.
Yeah. The biggest difference is probably the margins. A box of Cheerios, we had a good 60-70% margin on that. And then in food, in retail, as we experienced, we're talking 3 cents on the dollar.
Oh, yeah.
It is a brutal,
cost. Very different than apparel, too. That was very eye-opening to me,
really,
coming from apparel to food. Yeah.
Yeah, it is shocking, I think, to most people. I was in restaurants for a while, and I think the margin there is like negative something. So. Those are for fun, I think.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Awesome. So I think one of the most exciting things to talk with you guys about is e-commerce. It's what you're doing, of course. It's what your experience is in. It's what you're directing at Giant. You guys have been an awesome partner with Union Kitchen.
Thanks.
As we've been able to pivot more towards e-commerce with the pandemic. But on that note, so pandemic, e-commerce, you started right before that. You've been doing it longer than here. Talk to us, how did the strategy or how did things change, in March of 2020? Did you have the plan in place already, or did everything change?
I think the plan was moving and it was in motion. And so we were at the time rolling out more geographies for delivery. We were adding fulfillment in each of our stores. So we had about 100 Giant pickups at the time.
Yeah.
Now we have almost 100% of our stores covered with it. So we were getting there, but man, it just slapped us, really hard when it actually hit. Because all of that infrastructure even wasn't enough. We immediately sold out every delivery slot we opened. We immediately had to dial back our service on Giant Pickup, for instance, because we just couldn't staff it.
Really?
Yeah.
The amount of people coming into the store, the supply chain difficulties, the COVID cases that were pulling people out of the store, that was the biggest sort of nightmare. Is we just were trying to keep the product on the shelf, because as you remember, people were short on toilet paper and everything else. Yeah, we didn't want to promise something online that if you came to the store 3 hours later, we wouldn't have. And so for those reasons, we actually had to sort of tap the brakes a bit through COVID in March and April of 2020.
So was that you were trying to still prioritize the in-store experience, making sure that stock was there
A bit.
before online? Mm-hmm. Okay, I think that's very interesting.
It was survival at that point than anything, right? We were trying to manage people's expectations because of the shelves were wiped out.
That's great.
We were sold out for like 2 weeks. You couldn't even get a time slot. Yeah. And then substitutions for products out of stock, figuring that piece out. And it ultimately, I think, goes back to customer satisfaction. A lot of customers were trying us for the first time, and we wanted their experience to be as good as possible. They had a lot of options at that point. So just keeping and maintaining those customers.
Yeah, when you say for the first time e-commerce or first time ever engaging with the Giant brand?
Probably, you might be able to speak to it more, but a little bit of both. I think a lot of people in that moment tried online grocery shopping for the very first time in their lives because they were scared and they didn't want to go in a store, and rightfully so.
Yeah, it was something that people did think maybe you should grocery shop online.
Right, or just wasn't part of their routine, or a million reasons. Yeah.
That everyone was online.
Yeah.
Did you guys have to shut down stores, or were they all open every day, whole time?
We kept stores open. Like I said, the labor force, the supply chain, that was the biggest struggle. If you remember, we had senior hours in the morning. We had.
I forgot. Yeah. Wow.
There was definitely a lot of adjustment being made every single week on both the e-commerce side and on the store side. But it was about just trying to. We were a critical service back then. We were kind of on the front line, and there wasn't an option to just shut down and walk away.
Yeah.
Because we were needed, whether it was bringing it to your house or whether it was staying open to feed people, because restaurants weren't open and people, were locked down. So,
all right. In some ways, it was good for us. running our small grocery stores and manufacturing lots of food, and for you guys, that we were doing necessary, important work, that people, had to eat, and the supply chain really mattered. And we take these things for granted, I think, a lot. And, we had to not take them for granted during a pretty difficult period.
Yeah.
That was cool. So I know from my own experience that the kind of the e-com for Giant has changed quite a bit from, say, when you joined right before COVID to where it is now. What is kind of the e-com offering right now? What's it called? What can we do? What can't we do?
Yeah. I mean, I would say at the very basic level, it's three legs of the stool. We have Giant Delivers home delivery, free delivery during the week, $3.95 on the weekends.
Okay.
Very, very clear cut. We shop it for you. It's our own people. It's our own drivers. So we're really proud of the fact that
Awesome.
our trucks are in your neighborhood all across the city here and across the Mid-Atlantic. That's a point of difference. Giant Pickup, second leg of the stool, curbside. We're shopping it for you. Again, our associates. We're watching the quality, free service, no minimum order. And then the third piece of it is Instacart. So we are out on a marketplace where other retailers are also on Instacart. And during the pandemic, they actually provided excess capacity for us. So they were able to help fill it in with those gig shoppers and providers. That's more of a premium service, though. I look at that as more of a rush. If you're willing to hire that personal shopper who's going to go to the store for you.
And you need it in an hour.
And text you back and forth, a substitution. Yeah, that's the third leg, but it's certainly more of a defined need there in terms of that rush and premium.
Yeah, awesome. And what's the split between those? Do you find that some of them are more popular? Or?
It's roughly right now almost a third
Really?
Yeah.
each of them. Yeah. So we see 2/3 of that being delivery then, and about a third being pickup. But it varies by what town you're in. So in the middle of DC, it's delivery.
Yeah,
You go out
can't imagine doing pickup.
you go out to the suburbs. The further out you get, the more rural, you definitely get more pickup interest, and it's just makes sense, right? The DC Beltway, you don't want to sit in traffic and drive to the store, or maybe you don't have a car, you're commuting on Metro. That's the kind of difference that we also see, which drives the different demand.
Yeah, I've always been so intrigued at these things. I lived in New York, in the city of Manhattan in 2002 or something. And they had, what was it, Peapod, or I forget what it's called. But, it was awesome because how do you grocery shop in this city? It was so difficult. You're going to get these bags, you're going to get your 10 pounds
Get your
of
card
chicken on the subway. It's crazy. And then moving to DC, and I've lived in Chicago and Boston, and moved to DC, and when I moved here, there wasn't a delivery option really that was significant at the time. And so now it's all here. We're kind of all living, in this reality.
Yeah.
Delivery makes a lot of sense.
Yeah, and you said it. I mean, people have experimented with it through the pandemic, but now we're catching up to what fashion and electronics and toys and everyone else
There's
had
just a
already done
comfort level, that I think wasn't there pre-COVID.
Well, I think the concern was am I going to get a good vegetable? Am I going to get good meat? And that. And I think that's still the concern, probably. I don't, I'm sure you guys are working hard and trying to control for that. They're all good apples, they're all good pieces of meat, but I think that's an interesting side of it.
Yeah.
Yeah, our number one metric is probably the Net Promoter Score, our NPS. It's our customer satisfaction that says, hey, are we giving you quality items? Are we getting there on time? Are we, giving you a quality experience through the site and the checkout? And that's all a measure of, are we succeeding there? Because it's really hard. When you think about grocery, why isn't it higher percentage of e-commerce? It's because it's 3 temperature states trying to be brought halfway across town, and it's really hard to do when you consider Amazon or somebody else just needs to throw one box with one item in it on your doorstep.
Yeah, a lot more care has to go in.
Much more care. That's a great
definitely.
way to
Yes.
say it.
To the eggs on the truck.
You got the timing right. It can't sit on the porch for hours.
Yep.
Yeah.
All right. Well, very cool. Shifting gears a little bit, I want to think about kind of how brands, manufacturers are putting food on your guys' shelves. And so specifically, the advantages. So of e-commerce, or the advantages of being in the physical kind of retail store. So at Union Kitchen, for years, we've been pushing very hard on just the advantages of being a brand that sells through brick and mortar stores, leveraging the existing distribution networks because they scale really well, right? As you're selling more, you get bigger pallets, your costs go down, your shipping costs go down, all this. And if you're doing e-com, if you're selling on Amazon or you're selling on your website, your costs don't really go down over time. You can reach more people, but the economies of scale are less so. And so we've always made this big emphasis on work through the kind of traditional network of retailers. But with COVID, we changed our tone pretty heavily on that. But listen, online is a tremendous place to drive sales, to learn from customers because you can learn quickly, etc. But for you guys, I'm curious, how do you think about those advantages, and how do you talk to brands about that? Because you guys are bringing out a lot of brands.
Yeah.
Some of ours, of course, that are in the Union Kitchen Accelerator, but hundreds of other brands.
Yeah.
How do you think about the advantages? How do you even sell a brand on doing e-com first or retail first or both first? I don't know.
Right.
Tell me what you think about it.
I'll take that one, Greg, because I'm doing it all the time. I mean, I really propose it as a test and learn. Our stores are great, but the timing is long for us. It's called a cycle reset. It could be 9 months. If you missed that window, you got to wait almost a year, if not longer. Online, we're much more nimble. We don't necessarily have a rigid cycle reset calendar. I could have a call with you. You could be up on our site in 4 weeks selling your product. So I would say that's the biggest advantage. And also it's, a little bit of a mini testing ground. So we can figure out, does your pricing work? Does your packaging work? Are customers responding to your product? If they're not, let's troubleshoot why. We really want to work as partners with these brands so they succeed. And then, the ultimate goal is pipelining, specifically with Union Kitchen, these products into stores. I think right now we have 4 brands that started in e-com and are now on store shelves in Giant or are close to being on store shelves in Giant.
How they make that transition? Basically they listened and, made a product that worked and the numbers were there and you moved them? Or were there...
A little bit. I would say sales obviously are number one in units, but also even sales within your category. You could be, in a smaller category like frozen appetizers and be killing it, even though your sales aren't super strong, overall, but also filling a unique gap in our offering. That's part of it too.
Okay.
So there's a lot of reasons. We also tend to see just more traditional items do well. So for instance, with local, for instance, like frozen items do well, coffee does well. So it's a variety of factors. I think, a lot plays into it.
I think the other thing with e-com is you get a slightly different customer base. You get more early adopters. You get more tech savvy. So it's a different audience. It's slightly more premium households and affluent households, which could be a benefit to some of the brands, most of the brands.
Yeah.
A new innovative brand typically is going to do better.
Are willing to spend a little bit more money.
A little bit more disposable income.
Yeah.
Because if you go into brick and mortar, remember, you're going to be everywhere. If you're getting accepted into that reset on the shelf, you're in every neighborhood across all our 165 stores. So you're in high-end neighborhoods, you're in inner city neighborhoods, you're in rural, suburban, it's all over. So you have to survive and win everywhere. Whereas online, maybe you're a little bit more of that pure play and you get a little bit more of that purchase just out of curiosity from some of these kind of customers.
Gotcha. Are there sorts of products that maybe wouldn't do well in an online setting but would do well in a store setting? Or is it kind of the other way around where you might have something that does well online but maybe doesn't translate to the store because it's, I don't know.
Yeah.
I don't know. I'm curious.
I could speak to the first one. I would say more grab and go, impulse type items. It's hard online unless you're kind of showing it at the checkout or, online checkout. They can get lost a little bit in the shuffle. And we do, again, online customers want to maybe purchase a 6-pack of soda. They don't want to purchase a single bottle. That seems silly to buy that online. So just, things like that I think tend to suffer a little bit, as well as maybe items that are just more niche or kind of not confusing, but just hard to understand where you'd want to pick up the package. Those struggle a little bit too.
Yeah, one of the things for me is it's just a difference with online versus maybe a pro or con, but once customers find something they like, it's harder to discover. But once they find it, it becomes part of their past purchase and it becomes just a one-click, I can load half my cart for next week. And so your loyalty almost is a little bit higher with online if you make it in and people are like it and want to buy it again. So
it's an interesting thing for brands to think about. How do you get in that purchase in the crowded online marketplace? because there's a real stickiness.
Yeah.
I mean, I order online from you guys, and I basically get the same thing every time because you're just like, yeah.
I do need that again.
Okay, yeah. And I do want that. Thank you for reminding me. Carrots. So my diet is really locked in. Carrots, celery, apples, cucumbers every time.
You're a real healthy guy.
Healthy.
That's the healthy things. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. I'm eating a lot of Italian subs in our stores, which is detracting.
It's awesome.
My doctors had to talk to me about that. So. Okay, so we're seeing kind of a different purchasing behavior online versus in store, but I also imagine, pre-pandemic to kind of where we are now and through the pandemic, that maybe people were looking for larger format stuff because maybe they just changing lifestyle. And we counseled and coached a lot of our teams to do larger stuff. If they were doing, a small thing, let's move to 64 ounce. Let's if it's a single serve, let's move to a multi-serve. And we saw that making a massive difference over the last couple of years. I don't know is that a pandemic thing or is that an online thing or both?
I think it's a little bit of both, honestly, but we've seen the exact same thing with larger sizes, bulk, if you will, just growing leaps and bounds. I mean, I'm looking more at the online side, but I know the store side has seen it as well. We created a bulk, landing page for our customers, even to house all the product together. And thinking of 8 Miles, we're launching his larger format family size Mac, next week.
We had that one here.
Yeah.
It's like this big,
it's huge.
Right? Yeah, it's huge.
But we're definitely seeing that demand from our customers.
Gotcha. And speaking of 8 Miles, you guys are you launching that online or also into the stores or?
It is launching online
to
start. Yeah.
The other thing I'll say about bulk though is we also have a decent business to business delivery business. So e-com also includes us supplying office break rooms and college campuses and other kinds of formats where that bulk is more attractive. They're buying for multiple people in the office or something. So brands should consider there are other audiences out there too, not just who's walking through those stores.
Have you guys found yourself, maybe working with a brand that doesn't have like the pack or larger format and asking them to do that? Is that something that maybe you've gotten to do, Kate, or?
Yeah, I mean, now that you say it, I probably should ask for it more. A lot of times they're like, oh, we have this. I'm like, perfect. But yeah, that's definitely, especially if it's a product that is doing well, that would be, I would think, a natural next step of, can you make it in a larger format size? Because that's, preferably how people might want to purchase it.
I mean, you're working on some projects today right now, which are e-com only. So we know we watch what sells well on Amazon or what transports well, right? Because if the cap keeps breaking off and leaking dish soap onto your groceries, that's not good.
That's not good.
But the manufacturers are watching that and actually designing packaging formats and different sizes and configurations to support now. We care about how much weight is it, how big and bulky is it to transport. So all that matters to us from a profitability perspective. And now the best, I would say, leading edge manufacturers are starting to take notice of building things for e-com only.
Yeah. And it's a fascinating change that everyone is probably going to have to make over the next few years. But manufacturers feel like they've been slow. I mean, some fast, but a lot have just been slow. They're like, nope, this is how we make it. Yeah. And you're still buying it, so we're going to keep doing it.
Yeah. No, thank you for bringing that up. It's interesting, too, because some formats, they're not able to be sold in brick and mortar. They're not available for grocery, but they are available for online sales. And so obviously we're not Amazon, but if it's just Giant Delivers, that's kind of the avenue, to be able to sell some of those products. So it's been exciting.
Yeah, no, it's very cool. So I think that I've been thinking about throughout all of this is Beauty Kitchen. We are trying to innovate awesome new products that people want, and we're doing it locally, right? We love having a local partner, and you guys have been awesome with that. In the last few years, it seems like you've made local a big initiative. What caused that, and tell us kind of what that means, like to make local an initiative.
I think it's been part of our journey that we are rediscovering. We've been in this market for 85 years. It was a local grocer.
That's fantastic.
And so we're kind of getting back to those roots a little bit. Our entire corporate staff, it is truly operated and managed locally. And we want to get back to that. And I think it comes back to this vision that we have that is we want to be the most trusted and loved local food retailer. And that should mean reaching out to every local manufacturer, entrepreneur, restaurant, whomever is in the food space, and pulling them in a little closer and talking to them and jointly figuring out those kind of partnerships.
I think that makes a lot of sense to me. I was talking to not in food, but kind of a national retailer, and things change market to market what customers want. And a lot of like large retailers, they're not good at recognizing that. The difference in culture, the difference in types of people, purchasing behaviors, what they do where. And I think there's so much value in just paying attention to what people want. And not only if consumers will buy them, but if someone's making it locally, it's because they think, because their friends, their family, their community has told them people will buy them.
Right.
And so it's a great kind of, way to tell what a local trend is or will be is local products. And we always talk about that. Like what we love about people making things locally and selling them locally is they're representative of the community. No one here is making things that people aren't going to buy.
Right.
Well, not well at least. They're making things that people here want, and as a local retailer, and that's what you guys are, right? That makes a whole lot of sense.
Yeah. It's the difference between taking one national assortment versus looking and understanding, like we would, the difference between a Baltimore buyer versus a Washington, D.C. versus an Annapolis buyer. There's different groups, under each of those umbrellas. And so when you understand the difference at a local level, you come to a different conclusion about what you need to sell and how to sell it.
Yeah.
Right.
I think local can tell you a lot about your customers in a way that other things can't. Because I feel like when you're a store, and we see this too, like you know very well what your customers like of what you have. What you don't know is what you don't have.
Right.
And what they would buy if you did have it. And I think local can kind of tell you that a little bit. You can get close to your customer and hopefully get some winners out of that. I mean, I'm sure all the new local innovative products don't work, but some do.
Right.
And I think that's awesome.
And I think what we heard too, a lot of customers wanted to purchase local, support local, but it was just, where do I find it? And
Exactly.
so that's a lot of the work we've done online to actually have a local landing page. You go right on our website, you see it, and you can shop by state. It's a really interactive, it's a very cool experience. And so being able to have customers find the product easily is, step number one.
Yes, and it is a very cool experience. You've done a great job. And it's evolved a lot over the last couple of years.
Considerably, yeah. Yeah, and I pulled some even just information because I wanted to, because it's fun. But, online, our local product growth, it's 5 times faster online than in store. Over 10% of our local products are online only. So we've really grown, that area of the business, local specifically online. So it's been a great test and learn.
Well, so, we're here to talk about, Giant and local brands and the synergies there. For anyone listening that has a brand and wants to launch and be a part of this local program with Giant, what sort of advice do you guys give them? What's the best way to get on your shelves, whether it's online or in stores?
I'll take that one. Sorry. So I would say it sounds silly, but organization. So coming in, having a line sheet, having, the UPCs, the case pack information, pricing, suggested retails, knowing who your competitors are, knowing, what you're up against. I think that's really important. Packaging is really important. If your packaging isn't going to be ready for 3 months, we can have a great conversation, but it's going to be really hard to sell your product. Or if we take a picture and then it's going to change, it makes things a little more challenging. And then I'd also say being authentic, talking to a lot of these local vendors and just hearing their passion, hearing why they made the product, why it's important. It's been really touching, honestly, to hear what, people have gone through to sell and create these brands and products. So just be yourself and be organized. That's my 2 takeaways.
I like those. I mean, that's probably versions of what we say, but basically it's like have your stuff together.
Yeah.
And care about what you do. Be passionate.
Right.
And that's not always an easy combination to find. And that's what I love about entrepreneurship. It's you're starting with passion, and what we're always thinking about is how do you put organization, a plan, a strategy with passion. It's kind of the core of what Unit Kitchen is.
Yeah.
Mush those together and see if you get something good that comes out the other end.
Well done.
Yeah. So review process then. So they have their stuff together. They're passionate. They're just exuding passion. What does it look like to then get your products in? And then how does that compare to maybe going into the stores versus going in online through you guys?
So again, I said we're a lot quicker.
Yes,
so we would review the product. We would see, do we have anything comparable already? How is that doing? Is this filling a gap in our offering? looking at price point. And then from there, it's a little more technical, but, we're getting your product imaged for online sales, which, you can't take a picture with your iPhone and send it to me. I've learned coming from other industries, food photography, especially on our website, is very important. We have to show the nutrition information. Everything has to be, very set in a certain way. So once it's imaged, the process there is pretty straightforward. Right now you guys are delivering twice a week to our delivery warehouse, so that's pretty straightforward. And again, I would say, maybe 4 to 6 weeks tops, kind of from start to finish. Pending no image issues or, an item shows up without a UPC, that happened before. But overall, it's a pretty streamlined process. And again, very different compared to the length of time in the brick and mortar stores, where again, those cycle resets are, 6+ months out. Yeah, so we're much more nimble.
Hey, obviously we love the retail, the brick and mortar channel, but, growth plans can really go awry when you're like, listen, we're going to go to this many stores this year. We're going to be in how many ever. And it's like, well, actually, you got to wait a year. You got to wait 9 months.
It's
yes, they're very excited about you. Giant wants to have you in their stores, but Q4.
Yeah.
I think that's interesting. It is awesome that you can just get in 4 weeks. And I think it must be so powerful to your buyers that are on the retail side to have the data that you guys are then providing. Is that a strong interaction? How does that work? Are they just begging you guys for data and answers?
No, my role, I don't feel like I didn't talk about at the beginning, but I've really, acted as a liaison between the category managers, the merchants at Giant Food, and what's happening online. So a lot of translating their hero items, their vision, making sure it's an omni-channel experience. I meet with all those category managers, at least, on the non-perishable side.
Category managers are store.
So think of the store merchant actually choosing the products for the store. So that's part of our monthly reviews. If they do have any products that fall under their categories, touting, hey, this frozen empanadas are, doing awesome online. This could be an addition, kind of then liaisoning between the vendor and that category manager with me present to kind of, get the conversation going.
What I know you kind of mentioned this before, but there's been a few Unique Kitchen products that have come in, gone online, found success, been able to transition to the stores, which is big,
right?
Because you guys sell a lot of food. What are those brands?
So it's Snacklins, Eat Pizza, and then coming soon, Compass Coffee and Stone's Throw Hash.
Okay, those are good ones.
Yes, yes.
And they're largely straightforward, basic things that people want, right?
Yeah.
There's that's both true online and in stores. Gotcha. So you talked about this a little bit, kind of best practices for being onboarded with Giant. Basically, have your stuff together. Great pictures.
Yeah.
Are brands taking pictures, or are you guys doing all that with your own on your side?
It's a third-party vendor. It's Syndigo. We work kind of outwardly with them, and they supply all the imagery.
Gotcha. So you're onboarded. You're online. You're hoping to get to the stores. You're hoping to grow your business. How do you guys kind of think of success for a brand? When are you going and telling the merchants that, man, this pizza is awesome and it's flying off the shelves? What's that look like? Is it they have to beat the national competitor? Do they have to hit a certain number of sales? Do you need to just really like it yourself?
It tastes good, and that's what we were saying before. I think it really depends on the product. Honestly, I go back to that category example of, the sales vary so different based on the category. But the example I use is Compass. In reviewing their sales on one of their products, it was outselling one of our Starbucks SKUs. And I was oh my gosh, something's actually happening here. But again, I think it depends on, to get into stores, the timing of, that reset and everything. But yeah, I think, is it filling a gap? Is it a unique product? And is it, selling or close to selling any national, pace-wise, any national brands?
Yeah. I love that. We certainly respect and appreciate what these big national brands have done over time, but we want our brands to knock them off.
Right.
In terms of beat them. That's what our stores are kind of for. We've got these corner stores. We want to see Snacklins beat Doritos. We want to see Compass beat Starbucks. We want to see Eat Pizza beat Stouffer's or Amy's, whatever, right? Are there some things that a local brand can do that position them maybe better to compete well against kind of a bigger, well-known brand? Are there things that you'd recommend people do?
Yeah, and I know sometimes, the digital marketing efforts that we have, it can be a little expensive for a smaller local brand versus, a large CPG. But even now, I'm talking to one of the vendors that's about to launch, and we're going to launch with $1 off TPR, a temporary price reduction, just so it, is on sale off the bat. That's a new tactic we're trying.
Well, it makes sense with something you said earlier. Like once you get in the cart,
right? It's just that initial buy.
I love that.
Yeah,
that's a
and that
compelling
repeat
reason
business.
to do anything up front to get in the cart.
Right. And then I talked about the local page. So that's actually, it's very prominent on our site now. And, you can become a featured vendor on the local page. That's getting a lot of, exposure and clicks too. So that's kind of an automatic thing that they don't have to pay for. We're doing that just to highlight the product.
That PR story is invaluable because I don't think the national brands are getting any sort of coverage locally.
Right.
No one wants to tell that story. So that to me is one of their biggest assets is bring the PR, bring the following, bring your social media presence, whatever else you have, go to events. We're local. The brand is local. How do you get out there in the community and show this is what people want, this is what people are aware of? And there's a little bit of that inherent demand that will come with it too. So I think that's a benefit that they have versus a national CPG.
Yeah, I do think that's maybe something that a small brand, an entrepreneur sometimes does forget or could focus more on is, okay, great, you're in Giant. But how do you make sure it does well?
Yeah.
Right.
What can you do to sell? Because yes, Giant wants to sell your product, but they don't really care if they sell yours or someone else's. They want to sell food, and they want to sell the food that sells the best. And so, how can you get in there and support those sales? Can you get a story in the paper? Can you blast social media? Can you send all your friends and family to go buy your pizza?
Yeah.
And so that's a story we're always trying to tell. But I think that's not a natural thing because they're like, oh, Giant will sell it now. But basically, your advice is, sell it, get in there, be in the game.
It's both. Yeah, there's partnerships out there, right? Like, are you in the local coffee shop at the checkout and people can grab an impulse buy it there? Are you forming a partnership with one of the local sports teams? So you're over at the stadium and they're being sold there. That's how you, to me, get into the fabric of that local culture and food culture. And then, that translates into sales through Giant or through Giant Online.
Yeah. Yes. Yeah, the selling is about engaging. How do you do that? Well, so kind of in wrapping up the conversation, it's like, what's next for you guys? And I know there's a lot. So I guess I'd rephrase that of what are you most excited about that's next for Giant and e-commerce? You can both give me one.
I'll give you one, which is a project that we've been working on for a long time. It's somewhat public now that we're going to be opening a second delivery fulfillment center over in Manassas, Virginia. So it expands our reach a bit more. It expands our speed of delivery. And we're just excited because it validates all the growth that we've been seeing in e-commerce. It sets us up for the next 5 to 10 years. And it's a commitment to that home delivery that we want to be the fourth truck in the neighborhood, right? Amazon, FedEx, UPS, and Giant.
I love that.
That's what I love seeing. That's my vision. So to see a second fulfillment center open up where we can expand that reach and speed, that's going to be brilliant.
Well, congrats. That feels like
thank you.
Success.
It's not open yet.
It's coming. Well, we're excited to deliver there. We're ready. We're ready.
You guys are confirmed. I already checked.
All right, let's go. Yeah, Kate, what are you excited about?
Well, Greg stole mine a little bit.
Yeah, I was worried about that. He seemed like it.
Yeah, he was really excited for that one. No, I would say just, again, it was May of 2020, I think when I started talking to you guys and we started doing kind of the test and learn with local, and just to see local expanding. And I think more importantly, from the store side, see so much excitement about local from the brand of actually Giant Food being so excited about local and just really embracing it. So, I think you'll see more, not even from the online side, but from the store side of, actually being able to package local products together and, being able to shop that way. So there's just a lot of movement and excitement around local. So just excited to see that come into fruition.
Harnessing it.
Yes.
Harness that excitement.
Yes.
Well, very cool. Well, Kate, Greg, thank you so much for coming on and talking about food and e-commerce and Giant and business and all that good stuff. It's been awesome.
It's been fun.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thanks for listening to Food Founders. If you liked today's episode, please rate, review, and subscribe to our podcast. We'll see you next time on Food Founders, stories from launch to scale.